Hey everyone, and welcome to the Cookie Crew. Again, my name is Aura, and this is basically going to be video one of a 4 to 5 part video series on the history of civil rights in America. After this, we will be following it with a series of the history of civil rights in the world. Today's video is basically going to be from the birth of civil rights in the United States to the Industrial Revolution. So starting with that, the birth of civil rights in the United States was basically in the Declaration of Independence, and it was saying, basically with the line, all men are created equal. Thomas Jefferson originally wanted to put in the Declaration of Independence that basically that Negroes are as equal as white people, and he actually had a clause that said Negroes and whites are all equal. And it used that word Negro, which is the only reason why I'm saying it. And basically that didn't pass. And it didn't pass because certain states at the time, or at the time they were colonies, they used slaves as their workforce. They did not want to say, oh, yes, these people are equal to us. Not evil, equal to us, because they work for us. We cannot say that people that we think of as property are equal to us. So that basically started everything from the future laws of even gender liberties to, say, Roe v. Wade, sister suffragettes. Like, that one line caused a huge civil rights thing for women and for racial minorities. And it's basically starting with the colonial period. As we all know, people came over to the United States, and they did more than just come here and settle a new land, because it wasn't really a new land. This land had been previously inhabited by the Native Americans. It still is partially inhabited by the Native Americans. And what the colonists did is they came in, some of them attempted to make relations with these people, but eventually, as history has shown us, that failed, and there was pretty much tension and fighting. And those people, as the years passed in the United States, they were driven farther and farther from their homelands. They were killed. They were purposely made sick. Colonists gave them blankets with smallpox in it on purpose to kill them. And originally, Native Americans were the slaves in the United States, and they were going to be continued to be used as a slave population until everyone started realizing that our source of slaves is dying from diseases, being kicked out, being killed in like wars. So we had to find a different way of getting our slaves. Well, we have slave trade that's been going on for centuries in Africa, so we brought that to the United States and started basing the slave trade on African Americans instead of Native Americans, which was the original emphasis. As the Native Americans have been treated in slavery, the African Americans were treated in slavery, except probably worse, because African Americans were seen as property when they became slaves. They were no longer people, they were beasts of labor. And so as the Native Americans are being pushed farther and farther away, Africans are being brought to the United States, becoming African Americans through generations and working for basically plantations, bootblacks, anybody. They were just there to work. Well, then came the Civil War, which basically was a fight between the North and South. The North saying, in a nutshell, the North saying, you cannot have slaves because they're people. The South saying, we need slaves because that is how we have our labor. And the Civil War, even though it hypothetically freed slaves, it did not actually free slaves. It produced tenement farming, Jim Crow laws, all of these horrible things that basically kept African Americans from enjoying being free. Then came the Industrial Revolution, which basically everybody started moving into these cities. and they started getting different jobs. Black people could buy their way out of the tenement farming that was keeping them stuck to the land, and it was a great thing. They could easily get money, provide for their families, provide for themselves, enjoy life, get their own land. And at this time, Native Americans were still being pushed into reservations, still being cheated, still being killed. Also, during the Industrial Revolution, we have an influx of immigrants, which is Irish and Italian and Czech immigrants, mainly, coming into the United States and looking for labor. And they were treated racistly as well, because they were seen as almost like the inferior whites. There were these people who were just here to do menial work, and then eventually when they had recessions, they would be considered job stealers, the same way illegal Mexican immigrants or illegal Chilean immigrants, any illegal immigrant is seen as today. Well, the Industrial Revolution had a good point for African Americans because of the National Negro Business League. Basically, it was a union for African Americans to protect their jobs in the cities, in the factories, building the ships, building anything, making clothing, being butchers, and it was a way of protecting them. And Booker T. Washington was the original president, and they had 320 branches. Native Americans at this time still have not improved, and they're still being in reservations. Fortunately, they still are in reservations most of the time, and they're still being cheated. It's a horrible situation for them. Irish people are also grabbing onto this ability to create a labor union and fight for themselves. So the Industrial Revolution just allows people to fight for themselves and to get a good job and break free, for the African Americans to break free from the slavery once and for all. And on that high note of people breaking free, people standing up for themselves, Irish no longer being beaten in the streets, I'd like to leave off this part 1 video. Part 2 will be coming out next week, hopefully as soon as possible. Sorry I've been a little delayed. So, thank you guys. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, you know how to contact us. We do now have a Facebook page and a Facebook person, so you can friend us and like us. Alright? Thanks. Bye, guys.